Anyone who's ever done anything worth doing has dreamed big, failed mightily, and mostly started from humble beginnings. This is a podcast about such people. The most fascinating podcast in the world is fascinating because of the stories of the human beings. Hello, everybody. It's Pat DiCerbo, the most fascinating podcast in the world. Nothing to do with me, has everything to do with the people that agree to talk to me. Today we have a very fascinating person. His name is Andy Barth. Andy is a native New Yorker, and he is also a wrestler, like lots of my favorite guests. Andy grew up in New York City, and he's going to tell us all about himself. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Pat.
I remember you telling me you grew up in the city, but I forget what borough you grew up in. And I remember you said you went to one of the high schools that you have to take an entrance exam to get to. But where did you grow up in New York
That's right.
City?
So I grew up in, I was born in Queens, New York, and we lived in Queens till I was 14 years old. At that time, we then moved into Manhattan. We really moved. That was 1975. Not necessarily the trend at the time. People, I think, were still moving out of Manhattan, but we were moving in. We really moved in for my sister, who was a professional ballet dancer at the time. And yes, and then I went to Stuyvesant High School, which was at that time was down on First Avenue and 15th Street. Since then, it's moved over to the World Financial area. And you did need to take a test to get in. I remember my mom asked me one time, well, she said, why don't you take the test for Stuyvesant? And I said to well, Mom, they hadn't told me we were moving to Manhattan yet. And I said, why? Why should I do that? You'd never let me go in there anyway, travel all the way from Queens to Manhattan every day. And we went back and forth about whether I should take this test or not. And I think I successfully laid out all the reasons why I shouldn't. So my mom then delivered the coup de grace by as any good mom would do, and said, "Oh, just do it for me." and I took the test. I got in, and 2 weeks after that, my mom told me that, oh, by the way, we're moving into Manhattan, and you can go to Stuyvesant.
2 coup de grace.
So that's a parenting tip for all the folks who listen to this podcast.
Just do it for me.
When all logic fails, I don't think it works for dads. I think it only works for moms.
That's
but
funny.
I think it's a good tip for any moms listening to this. When all logic fails and your child has probably gotten the better of you in the argument, you say, just do it for me. And there's no counter. It's like the perfect wrestling move. There's no counter.
Mm-hmm. So when you grew up in Queens, what are your earliest memories from when, like, you were a little kid? What was the neighborhood like where you lived, and any relatives in that neighborhood?
No, my grandmother came to live with us. We had a fairly small nuclear family: my mom, my dad, my sister, and myself. My mom's mom came to live with us just about the year I was born. Her husband had passed away. My grandfather had passed away. She was from Latvia. My mom was also from Latvia. My mom and dad are both passed away now. But my mom she had fled Latvia in October of 1944, and then come to the United States in the fall of 1950. And then she got married. She met my dad in New York City in 1952 or 3, and they got married then in 1953. And when my grandfather passed away in Latvia, they were able to get my mom out of that. Latvia at that time was a Soviet Socialist Republic under the control of the USSR. And so that was a process to get her out. But she lived with us, and that was it. I really didn't know many other relatives um, until much later in my life.
Hmm. What was your block like? What was it
In
like?
in in Queens, actually, it's interesting because we lived in a large apartment building in the neighborhood of Fresh Meadows. Um, there were only three large apartment buildings in the area. There were two 15-story buildings, and ours was a 20-story building. We called it a 21-story building because there was no 13th floor,
Mm.
something very common in apartment buildings. It's interesting how that number 13 is such a superstition. But we lived in the apartment building, so we knew we were able to walk to school. I went to PS 26 in one direction from kindergarten through sixth grade, and then I went to junior high school 216, George J. Ryan Junior High School in the other direction for seventh and eighth grades, and then high school in Manhattan for 9 through 12. And stayed in New York after that. I went to Columbia College and Columbia Business School directly after. And then when I was 24, moved out to Los Angeles with the Capital Group.
I remember. Um, what when you started wrestling, how old were you?
I was actually 14. I started wrestling. My dad had joined the New York Athletic Club, and they had a program. At that time, it was only for boys. Today, it's for boys and girls. It's called their Saturday morning program, and you would, they'd break you up into small groups. First thing in the morning, when you arrived there, and then you'd go to different sporting disciplines. And uh, um, I really enjoyed the wrestling. There was a coach there. His name was John Bruce, and he taught the Saturday morning class. And he asked me at one point, well, where do you go to high school? And I said Stuyvesant. He said, oh, I know a guy who used to be your coach there. It was a fellow, Mark Miller. Um, Mark had since moved to Julia Richmond High School, and it was a different fellow. My high school coaches, there was a fellow, Lee Perlmutter, and Martin Wasserman was my coach from sophomore through senior years in high school. But I started compared to what kids do today. I started rather late. I started when I was 14.
What do you remember about Stuyvesant when you first started going there? What was that like for you?
It was it was a lot of work.
Mm.
It was a lot academically. It was a very challenging place, um, and um, there were no dummies. I'm glad that they didn't grade on a curve at in high school, because I think it would have been a very tough place to compete academically. Um, I felt I got, but while it emphasized math and science, I was very impressed at the at how rigorous the humanities education was, and foreign language. Um, there were requirements in all those areas that you had to complete in order to get your high school degree. And but again, it was I was sorry, so I guess I should say it was a relative standard, but I ended up graduating as one of the athletes with the highest grade point average. So I don't think I had the highest for any of the athletes, but it was tennis players were awfully smart also. But the wrestlers were we worked hard. Strangely enough, lots of times I think as a lot of wrestlers probably found is that they had a higher grade point average during the season than out of season, probably because they had zero time for other distractions.
Mm, interesting. So I figured you must have gotten good grades to get into Columbia College.
I think so. Yes, I must have. But I didn't apply to many colleges, and I only applied to I think four colleges. Um, Columbia was the what we thought was the best one that I'd gotten into. Um,
Where
the
else were
difficult
you
thing
thinking?
about that, I was going to just say, the difficult thing about going to Columbia was at the time, 1979, Columbia did not have enough housing for all of its undergraduate students. So if you lived within a 10-mile radius of the Morningside campus, you were classified as a commuter and given lowest priority. So I had to spend my we were living on the west side of Manhattan. I was definitely living within that radius, and therefore I was I had to live at home while I went to college. So I was a commuter all through my undergraduate experience.
Why would you have lowest priority if they had
Because I
a...
was a commuter, because we were living in Manhattan, and they had if you lived within they didn't have enough housing for all the undergrads, and if you lived within a 10-mile radius of the Morningside campus, you were classified as a commuter.
I would think that would make you desirable, right? Because you didn't need housing and they didn't have a lot of housing. It's
Well,
funny.
it probably did, and maybe that helped me get in,
There
but
you
it
go.
it didn't help me live on campus.
Understood.
No, as
Oh, okay.
I view the undergraduate experience that my children have had, that my wife
Mm-hmm.
has had, and I definitely see that they are uh, they absolutely had I think a lot more fun. But I will prevail and say that I think I did have an outstanding um, undergraduate education, and that also my wrestling experience at Columbia for me was a memorable one. Um, I think, Pat, once you're a
Mm.
wrestler, you're always a wrestler. It always affects the way you think about things and your outlook on life. And so I that certainly happened to me as well.
No doubt about it. So did you get recruited for wrestling or did you walk on or how
No,
did
I
it?
was a walk on. I was a
Okay.
walk on. Yeah, yeah.
So first day of school or before then you approached the
Well, the
coach?
season didn't start at that time. The season didn't start in college until I guess October. That was the
Mm-hmm.
first time. So I think I showed up the first day for practice, and uh, it was a it was it was an eye-opening experience because the kids who were recruited were meaningfully uh, uh, better than I was. Um, I remember Coach Ron. Well, our coach was Ron Russo, Ron had wrestled at Bloomsburg. He
Mm-hmm.
was quite an accomplished wrestler. Very good coach. Um, he was introducing a number of us. I can't remember. Was it my sophomore or my junior year? I'd won some out of season tournaments and improved quite a bit. And he was introducing several of the returning students to a number of alumni. And he said, and I'd like Andy Barth. Andy has improved enormously. I have to tell you, when he showed up in the room his freshman year, we had 31 wrestlers, and Andy was the 33rd best.
Mm.
But I finished up as captain of our team, and I had some honorable mention Ivy League honors. So I never made it to the NCAA's. The EIWA's was our qualifier, and I fell one or two matches short of making it to the NCAA's.
So hard to make it.
Yeah, when you think about all the wrestlers that are out there, and how hard everyone's working, it is a real honor just to get to the tournament.
Yeah, it's a real honor just to wrestle for a place like Columbia. I was a pretty good high school wrestler and got some interest from some schools, but I'm probably a better fan than I was a wrestler. I pay attention a lot,
Yeah.
but it just never ceases to amaze me how you'll be watching a match at the NCAA tournament and you'll have like 2 4-time state champions from 2 different states and they're not even seated high.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You could be a state
Yeah.
champ 4 times in, who knows where. Somewhere in the Midwest, maybe, or maybe in the far West is a better example. And you're not even going to place in the tournament. You're not going to be an All-American. And
Yeah.
I'm just over and over shocked by how good these people are.
Well, the nice thing though is, Pat, is that as the older you get, it turns out the better you were as a wrestler. People tend to
They
elaborate and
embellish.
expand on embellish. That's a better word. They tend to embellish on your past accomplishments. I'll be honest. I mean, I was not a great wrestler. I was a good wrestler, and I had a few great moments. And so that's kind of what you live on. Those memories get you through the tough times sometimes.
I feel like for me, it's a lot like regular normal life. So, I mean, for the most part, it was drudgery, but I kept coming back. And then 10% of the time, great things happened and it was glorious.
Mm.
But my best sports memories, to be candid, are summer baseball. And that
Oh.
had a lot to do with luck. I wasn't good enough to make the high school baseball team, but I was a reasonably good hitter and I often sat the bench. But I pinch hitted a lot because I could get the bat on the ball. And we
Mm-hmm.
were in the championship game my senior year and tied. And there was a guy on third base, 2 outs, and I had a Casey at the bat kind of thing. Got a
Mm.
base hit, won the game, and that was my probably my best sports memory of anything. It just
Yeah.
unlikely, but I was really no good at baseball, but I could get the bat on the ball.
Yeah.
But wrestling to
Yeah.
me, it just taught me fundamentally that if I kept coming back, that I would
Yeah.
improve. And
Yeah.
little by little I did. And like my brother had a lot of real natural talent. I think I've told you about him, but he made the States 3 times and would have made it 4 times if not for breaking his hand on my face. in a kitchen argument. But he wrestled Tom Ryan in the semifinals of New York State championships and was ahead by like 8-1. And Tom came back and beat him. In fact, we were talking about it Sunday at Father's Day. My father was like, Tom Ryan was in such better shape than Kevin. And by the third period, it didn't matter. Tom was going to win that match. But
Wow. Yeah.
but my brother Kevin, when he graduated high school, he was the winningest wrestler in New York State history. He had like 135 wins and I don't know, 8 losses or something. He was good. But
Yeah.
nothing like the kids today. I think they have over 200 wins.
Yeah, I think they are putting though. I think they're putting some limits on the number of matches you can have in a day, number of competitions you can have in a week. I think they're kind of leaning against excessive competition.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was but I we were fortunate. We were Ivy League champions 3 of the 4 years I was there. Um, 2 of those I contributed meaningfully to, and those team experiences. Um, you think oh, you win one championship, you think you'll win them all, but it doesn't happen that way in wrestling, and each one, you have to really you have to cherish. You got a few days to cherish it, and then you have to move on, to the next event, because because someone's ready for you the next day.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I missed you this Saturday in New Jersey, but there was
Oh,
some
yeah,
great
there's some good
wrestling there.
wrestling. Yeah, yeah. We had to attend a wedding
Mm-hmm.
out here in California. I'm still, I don't know if we mentioned it earlier on. I still live in California, in the Los Angeles area,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a long time a work colleague of mine whose son was getting married, uh, and I kind of had to be there for that. So
Mm-hmm. I
that's
understand. This
every now and then real life intrudes into my wrestling interests.
right. It's unfortunate. But
But we'll be going to the Worlds in September.
mm,
They'll be in Zagreb, Croatia. So be heading out there in middle of September. It's pretty exciting. We have a very young team, um, very new team. There's a few veterans, but a lot of people who this is their first. A lot of folks said that this will be their first world team. Um, we do have a one Olympian on, Spencer Lee, so he's
mm-hmm.
got some experience at that level. We have another Olympian, Kyle Snyder. He's got a lot of experience, and then we'll
Mm-hmm.
see. Well, they're still competing. One is still competing in mid-July at Fargo. It was one spot at 61 kilos. They're still looking to qualify that spot. Um, Vito Arujau is wrestling Jax Forrest.
Mm-hmm.
That's 2 out of 3 up at Fargo.
Mm-hmm. What was the story there? Why was the delay?
Vito is a former world medalist and one of the Final X qualifiers, and I didn't hear what it was, but he had an injury that allows. There's a whole well laid out process um, at USA Wrestling that's guided by something called the Ted Stevens Act. Ted Stevens was a senator from the state of Alaska that uh, uh, put forward this act that required that the competitive process for making a world team be completely laid out ahead of time. And one of the rules that is that if you are returning a returning medalist and you've qualified for the finals, and you have a legitimate injury, you're allowed to move the you're allowed to ask for the date of the final qualifier to be moved. There's not. I went through that very, very quickly, Pat. There's a whole series. It's not that simple, and you can't just demand it. There's a whole protocol and set of rules around it.
Got it. So you're approaching graduation. Did you know you wanted to go to business school, or was that an afterthought? Or
Actually, I had a friend of mine had actually encouraged me to think about business school because I was thinking about law school, and I was and that friend encouraged. I said, you ought to think about a JD MBA, which was not easy to get at that time. At that time in 1983, you had to apply to law schools separately. You had to apply to business schools separately, and then when you got into both at a given university, now you could put the program together. And I was going to go. I'd applied to 8 law schools, 8 business schools. The two best combinations I got into were at the University of Chicago and Columbia, and I was thinking seriously about going to University of Chicago just to go and live someplace different, be in a different environment. But I got a call one day from Columbia Business School, and they said, well, we'd like to offer you this fellowship, merit fellowship for the business school. And I said, well, what's that? And what does that involve? And I said, well, it's all tuition plus a stipend to live on. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty good. And then the only thing I found out though is I had to accept it for that year. So typically that JD MBA program would have been, 2 years law, 1 year business, 1 year combined. And so I had to do it out of order. So I had to defer my admittance to the law school. I had to complete my year at the business school. I couldn't afford not to take it at that time. I had to, if I getting 1 year of graduate school completely paid for was something I had to take advantage of. And so then as I was ending that year, and I was really finding that I enjoyed business school a lot. I hadn't been thinking about not continuing on to law school, but I was in a bit of a quandary because I was really, really enjoying business school. And then so I didn't reapply for my fellowship because I didn't think I'd be able to take advantage of it. I thought I was going to law school next year. And then this letter shows up and it says that my fellowship has been renewed. And so I took it as a sign from above that I was meant to finish business school. And then so I deferred my law school admittance another year and just keeping the option open. And then I finished up my my business school.
And then what happened?
Oh, well, now I had to start thinking about either getting a job or going to or really going to law school. So I started looking for a job. I was fortunate. Wrestling had connected me with a number of people. There was a fellow, Alex Porter, who was a hedge fund manager. Um, he'd been a hedge fund manager back before it was popular. Um, and he said, you really ought to think about this business that I'm in, the investment management business. It's a fascinating business. You meet really terrific people, interesting people. It's always different. You have to think about the markets and companies, and you really need to have a critical mind. I think you might do well at it. I think you should take this class at Columbia with this friend of mine, Jim Rogers.
Hmm.
And Jim Rogers, he'd worked with Quantum Fund um, for a number of years, and now he was serving as an adjunct professor at Columbia. And he admitted me into his securities analysis class, and I know what a new puppy must feel like when its eyes open for the first time, because I was in this class and it just felt, wow, this is so interesting and so exciting. And um and and then I found that you could do this for a living. I thought, wow, well, I'd be the you know happiest, happy as, what's the expression, happy as a clam, if I could get into that business. And um and then I was lucky enough. Um I'd never heard of the Capital Group. I lived in New York. My perception of the world was that New Yorker magazine cover that shows, Ninth Avenue, and then 10th Avenue takes up half the cover, and then there's the Hudson River, and then there's the rest of the country
Mm-hmm.
off in the distance. My view was very parochial, in the sense that I thought New York was kind of the center of everything. And but then I got invited to interview with this investment management firm in Los Angeles called the Capital Group. Um, it's a kind of a funny little story. One of the portfolio managers in Capital's New York office was spearheading the recruiting up at Columbia, and he went to talk to the dean of placement at Columbia Business School, and he said, "I know you have all these rocket scientists, all these masters of the universe, all these hard chargers up here at Columbia. Do you have anybody like that, um, who's kind of normal?" And the dean, his name is Fred Way, Dean Fred Way, God bless his soul, said, to this fellow from Capital, "Well, the most normal guy we have up here, okay, it's a relative standard, but the most normal guy we have up here, and he wants to be in your business, is this guy, Andy Barth." And that's how I got my first interview at the Capital Group. And I was just very, very fortunate. I made it through the interview process, and um, every time I made it to another round, the story about Capital just got better and better. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'd never heard of this company, and it sounds like exactly the type of place I'd like to be. And I think, something like 25 interviews later, I got an offer, and then I was moving to Los Angeles you know, uh, in the summer of 1985.
Never to return.
Well, I come back to New York quite a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife and I came back. We worked out of our Capital's New York office for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, I set foot in New York um, quite regularly,
Mm-hmm.
but I missed this last weekend.
Mm. So you get to Capital Guardian Trust. Is that the
Yes.
formal name, or?
Well, the Capital
American.
Group was the holding
Okay.
company. There was Capital Guardian Trust. There's Capital Research and Management Company. Um, American Funds was the distribution arm for our mutual funds. Um, I spent over 32 years there. I just retired at the very end of 2017, early 2018. Spent a
Mm-hmm.
little over 32 and a half years there.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I was an auto analyst for 15 years. I was a financial services analyst for 20. I followed some other industries as well. I did a little portfolio management. I spent almost 9+ years. I spent in our fixed income area for doing portfolio management of investment grade credit portfolios. I was a research director. I managed a U.S. equity research unit for 9 years, a global research unit for 6 years. I served on our fixed income management committee, managing that business for 5+ years, and served on our overall management committee for 5 years. So did a lot of different things. It was a good experience. It was a great company, great place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've heard great
very
things.
very yeah.
I've
Sorry.
never heard a bad thing about the American funds. Just a great operating structure from what I know, and everybody's pulling in the same direction, and there's no conflict between the consumer and the owners of the firm, and no third parties. Like, it's not a public company,
Mhm.
right?
I think it's a very helpful structure for
Mm-hmm.
the investment, for being in the investment business,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have outside pressures that are forcing you to try to manage for the short term. I
Mm-hmm.
think being able to focus for the long term. Um, we always encouraged our investors to really look for opportunities over a 3 to 5 year investment time horizon. Um, and I don't know that we could have done that effectively if we had been a publicly traded company. Yeah, I was on our management committee. I was on our management committee for 5 years. Um, so and the toughest thing in the in investment management business is managing people. I don't know that there's any. I think in any large professional organization, whether it's a law firm, an investment bank, a management consultant, or an investment management firm, I don't know that it's ever very easy to manage uh, uh, individuals. And I don't know that you could even really say that you manage people. It's more, I think, like herding cats. Try to try to try to rally them, keep them all moving in the same direction. They're all very independent minded, and so that's a I think any time you're in a professional service business like that, uh, law, consulting, investment banking, investment management, um, people management is a very uh, intense intense role.
Did you find was it intuitive for you? Did it come naturally, or did you struggle with it initially? Like, how did you handle moving into management? I get the feeling it was a process, but
Uh, to be honest, I did not expect to do that.
mhm.
Uh, I think I was encouraged by more senior people to move into to being a research director. Um, I can see why they felt that way. I tend to be very patient and thoughtful. Um, I'm not hard judge of people, but you have to be able to assess people's work and help them to try to do better. Um, but I'd say I was not judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, I think you have to be you have to have a innate sense or innate desire to help people and be helpful. Try to help them do a better job and try to help the process as much as you can. Um, so uh, I can see why others encouraged me to go in that direction. And as I said, I stayed in. So I stayed in as but as a you never as you could if you added up all the years I gave you um, in each role,
Hmm.
it adds up to a lot more than
There's some
32.
overlap in there, I'm thinking.
So there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
overlap. So you're always doing multiple
Mm-hmm.
things. And uh, but for the 15 years I was a research director, that was quite a long time. So I guess they weren't too upset with me.
Mm-hmm. You stay in touch with your former colleagues, any of them?
Uh, a few every now and then. As I said, I was down at one former colleague's son's
Mm-hmm.
wedding this weekend. Um, Actually, I got invited. One of the fellows that I hired out of Columbia Business School. Um, uh, he's having a little retirement celebration tonight, so I'm going to go over. I'll see some of them. We'll see if any of them remember me. I do have here's a chance. I'll put a plug in, that Capital Group, in addition to having a fine set of mutual funds in the American funds, and also providing great institutional money management services. They also have a private client division. So I maintain it as I retired from my professional career. I've sort of let other people who I know and trust um, really look out for um, uh, uh, most of our money. So there's a pitch. Anyone looking for private client services, think about the Capital Group. Even though I have no financial interest anymore in capital. Um, you get to buy a ownership interest over time, but when you retire, then you have 6 years over which to uh, sell it back to the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at 7 years, 7.5 years since I retired. So this recommendation comes with um, no financial um, implications on my part.
Understood. So, what keeps you interested today? I mean, every time I talk to you, you have something going on. You seem like you're a really value-driven person, and as you pointed out, you like to help other people. Like how you spend.
Yeah, I've had a lot of philanthropic involvements because of my sister. I was very involved with the American Ballet Theater. She danced there for 6 years. I've been on their board now for 24 years, and I served as a chairman of the board for 8.5. I've stepped off as chairman and just remain as a board member. Um, I'm in what I like to say is for some of these responsibilities, I'm in a pruning mode. I'm trying to create a little extra time um, in my life, so I'm sort of trimming down some of these philanthropic involvements. Um, I was on the board at a wonderful organization not far from where I live called the Huntington Library Art Museum and Gardens. I encourage people to visit that when they're in Southern California. Outstanding gardens, amazing library collection of artifacts, and a very good, also a very good art collection. Um, I remain with a little bit of involvement there as a trustee emeritus. I still chair their investment committee. Um, I've been active here in California at the California Science Center Foundation. They have a wonderful project going on where I've had some involvement. They were one of the recipients of one of the four space shuttles. They received the Endeavour, and they're currently in the process of building an air and space wing to their museum. And in that wing, they will mount the Endeavour upright in its launch position. You'll be able to see. It'll be the only one of the four Endeavours on display where you'll be able to see it in its full launch position. Because of their connections with the various aerospace and defense companies in Southern California, they were able to acquire all of the componentry, the launch componentry, the solid rocket boosters, two solid rocket boosters, the what they call the ET, the external tank, huge orange tank of fuel. There's no fuel in it now, and an appropriate launch um, frame. So that building now is that it is mounted. It is shrink wrapped to prevent it from any damage in the rest of the construction process. But that's going to be a great project. I've been active at my alma mater, Columbia. I have, and as you probably know, I have a wide and active involvement in wrestling in the United States. I'm supportive of my college team. I started the Beat the Streets in Los Angeles, where just this last year, I just got a report from our staff, our executive management team there. Um, and we had over 1,500 young people come through the program this year. So that's terrific. They're getting ready. By the way, Beat the Streets is if this podcast gets broadcast um, soon. Beat the Streets nationally is having a tournament of all of its component organizations. So there'll be Beat the Streets from Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Cleveland, New England, all sending teams to compete. There'll probably be a few others as well. Active with I'm going to be the team leader for our men's freestyle team for this upcoming Olympic quad. And so that starts this year and runs through the Olympics in Los Angeles. That'll take a little bit of time here and there. I did that for the Rio quad, and I have a lot of memories of that. It makes me twitch a little bit because the day after I was named the team leader in February of 2013, the day after that was when it was announced that the Olympics were going to be dropping wrestling. And as you probably know, we staged with a lot of people and a lot of active support from all around the world. The wrestling community was able to win the battle to restore wrestling to the Olympics. So I'm very proud that we did that.
Thank you.
And yeah. So and then I have a few others. I have a few other charitable things that I get involved with. Um, I, I won't keep boring you, but unless you keep prodding me.
No, I mean, like I said, you stay busy even though you're not so-called
Yeah,
gainfully employed anymore.
yeah,
With a
yeah.
lot of great mission. Um, I have a habit of asking people a question towards the end. If you've listened, then you know. But the most important punctuation in the English language is the hyphen. Do you know why?
Hmm. Because it's a continuation, or
It's between your date of birth and your date of death eventually.
oh,
So if we were talking about you 50 years from now and you weren't here, what would you want people to know about you? What kind of a person are you?
well, um, I'd like them to know that I care deeply for my family, and that I tried very much to make sure that my family came first, that I took care of them, um, that I looked out for them. Um, I made time when they needed it. Uh, I would like people to think that I was someone that uh, gave back to my community, that I gave back to the things that the efforts that helped make me, um, what I am. I supported wrestling. I supported my um, university. I supported um, other things in that had been helpful to me in my life, that I didn't forget. Um, I didn't forget what brung me,
Mm-hmm.
or um, I'd like I'd like people to say that uh, whether um, he was successful or unsuccessful, that he was success or failure didn't change him.
Mm.
Didn't change the way he interacted with you. Didn't change the way he treated people. That he always treated people with respect and dignity, um, no matter what no matter what their circumstances were. So um, yeah, that was a good. I was a good. That no one will know this. So, I mean, I was a good son, and I was a husband, and I was a good father, and that I was a good grandfather.
Mm.
So
I think that's the way people think of you.
well, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I don't know. They don't tell me, but they shouldn't tell me.
No, but it's just always nice to, I mean, you're so generous and it's very nice to be around you. I probably would have never seen a Lakers game if you hadn't suggested it.
Oh,
So just really,
I'm glad you could join.
yeah,
I'm glad you could join. That was a lot of
that was a
fun.
lot
That
of
was a
fun.
lot of
And luckily we had some wrestlers in the group.
yeah. And let me know if you're let me know when you're coming out with that group again.
I will.
You know, yeah.
I don't want to overstay my welcome, but I will. I will remind you. But I'm
Yeah.
just grateful to have you as a friend and to stay in touch with you. And I appreciate you talking with me today because I think your story is very interesting and I think other people enjoy to listen as well. Thank you again for your time.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome, Pat. Enjoyed it, and thank you.
My pleasure. Hopefully, I'll see you in Croatia. I'm not sure I can make the trip, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, the men's I think is it wait, let me see. Yeah, I think the men's freestyle is the first. it's the early part of the week of starting Saturday the 13th, and then the women follow, and the Greco follows that.
Okay.
So if you can make it for all of it, great. If you can only make it for some of it, pick what's the most interesting to you.
I have to get permission from my wife. We'll have to see.
Wow. That's wise. That's wise.
Well, I hope you...
I recommend that as well, getting permission from your
wife. She's pretty lenient, but again, I don't want to take it for granted. But
Nope.
I'm sorry.
No, I think don't take it for granted.
Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
You're welcome, Pat. Thank you.
Sir.
I enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoy the most fascinating podcast in the world, please follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Apple Podcast.